Hello audience, this is Dennis Sietsma, and the name Sietsma is pronounced this way in Holland, I'm told, by people that have come over the big pond, tell me. In America it's pronounced several ways, Sietsma, Stietsma, whatever. But anyway, the upshot is I am an amateur YouTube producer. My videos are crude, no music, no yada, but these are segments I hope to make into a video production when I get better at editing, and add all my reference material at the end of a slideshow of a video production. But for now, I appreciate thumbs ups. I really appreciate if you subscribe, because that helps me as a producer to do more in the future, makes it worth my while. It is October 19th, 2023. It's a Thursday. It's 84 degrees. It's 1:03 in the PM on the Eastern Seaboard, Eastern Standard Time, EST. And the subject of this video is getting the coolant, the air trapped out of your closed cooling system on a 3.7 liter Mercruiser engine. This applies to all marine closed cooling systems, so marine professionals would find this to be redundant and unnecessary to explain. But since I am an amateur, not a professional marine guy, I'm a do-it-yourself aficionado, I have to explain the physics involved of air trapped in the closed cooling system and how to burp it, how to get it out. Mercruiser explains this in their service bulletin 83-11, which means it was released in the year 1983. Unfortunately, the service bulletins were only shared with dealers in 1983, and the internet wasn't even invented until an international agreement in 1991. And even as late as 1995, only computer geeks knew about it. But I have blessed you on my Facebook group, 3.7 liter Mercruiser with all the service bulletins. And you can go to the media tab on the Facebook group and look under albums, and I try to list every problem and answer with the supporting documentation that you, if I ever get around to editing this, will be at the end of the production. Another page from the service manual, and I call service bulletins SB and service manual SM. This is from the 1989 version of the official Mercruiser service manual, page 6A-9. So what it says is coolant recommendations. I use 50-50 premix because I don't want to jazz up the mixture, and if you have too much antifreeze, your seals will leak, and you'll cry big alligator tears because you'll lose coolant. It says that if you have water with a solution of rust inhibitor, you can use that as coolant during the summer months above freezing. They recommend a 50-50 mix of ethanol, glycol, antifreeze, and water to prevent possibility of freezing. But in areas where the possibility of freezing does not exist, you can use a solution of rust inhibitor and water mixed to manufacturer's recommendations. If you price that stuff out, the rust inhibitor is very expensive. So for troubleshooting purposes, if your seals are leaking, everybody cries about the 3.7 liter. Now, I call it this name because Mercruiser called it several names, I guess for marketing, from 1976 to 1989. And I'm doing this video for the benefit of people in my Facebook group who have asked me to do it. But it's very important to know if your seals are leaking, you can get through the season as long as it's above freezing, no possibility of freezing, with just water mixed with rust inhibitor. Now the reason the rust inhibitor helps you, it makes it thicker. Too much antifreeze is thinner than water, and with the rust inhibitor, it's thicker. And if you ever mix up pancake batter, you'll know the difference between thick and thin. But the seals definitely know, and they leak all the time. This engine, which started out with I don't know what name, I think it was MCM 165, and it progressed to 388, and I don't know, 470 is the most used term, and several other. There's probably 25 names for the same basic engine, but they did do changes in the engineering from 1976 to 1989, especially to the rectifier regulator, which they improved, but never perfected. Since then, people like Breezeworks have come out with a alternator kit, and CDI Electronics in Huntsville, Alabama have come out with an improved switching type rectifier regulator. A switching type regulator does not generate the heat. Now, I am a semi-retired, which means I'm out of work. I'm looking for high-paying work. Somebody wants to hire me ad hoc or project-based, make me an offer that I can't refuse, money-wise. But I know a lot about electrical engineering, and I've been an inventor and yada yada yada. I'm not going to get into all that, but this 3.7 liter engine can be a real gem if it's done right. But the fact that we have dissimilar metals between the head, which is steel, it's a Ford head, it's been marinized by Mercruiser, and there are aftermarket people that do it too, like my friends at Clearwater Head Exchange in St. Petersburg, Florida. They'll sell you a good head, brand new, been marinized in their machine shop for a reasonable price. But the heads crack, especially in the exhaust area. So a cause of overheating is loss of coolant from a cracked head. This engine is very touchy about torque specs, especially between the head and the block, because if you don't follow the service bulletin 81-30 verbatim, I mean really strictly follow it, you're gonna flex the block and burn out your bearings, because the block is open deck and soft, and the head is very hard steel, and something's got to give. And when the block gets flexed, all that work on your bearings is wasted. Your piston rods and crankshaft bearings will probably smoke, and you'll get rod knock, and then you'll cry big tears. Oh, this is a lousy engine. Not a lousy engine, it wasn't built right or maintained right. So if you change a head or head gasket, make sure you follow service bulletin 81-30 strictly. It's 5 pages, it's gold. Pay attention, people, or suffer. Again, I'm not a marine professional. I'm a self-taught shade tree mechanic. You could call it Rube Goldberg, you could call it however you want to call me. I'm trying to help you with my research, because I learned a lot of this on a Vega engine that had a soft open deck block, and the Vega was worse because it didn't have sleeves. It had aluminum cylinders impregnated with silicone. Duh. That ought to work just fine, engineers at General Motors, but it didn't. But when it was sleeved, it was a pretty decent engine if you got the carburation right on the Vega engine. And this 3.7 liter can be a real gem if it's done right. And it can be the engine from hell if it's not. So, besides the cracked heads and the leaky head gaskets and the leaky seals, several things can cause loss of coolant. All of them bad, like a rusted out seawater elbow, which can lead to hydrostatic lock and engine destruction if any of that water gets trapped in the cylinders. So I recommend, if you have any problem at all, stop what you're doing, take the spark plugs out, and see if you have water in the cylinders. And run your engine as often as you can, because every time you run it, you're going to lubricate it. And if you see anything wrong, see if they have any water in the cylinders by taking the spark plugs out, putting a little Marvel Mystery Oil into the cylinders, maybe 30 cc's for each cylinder, and then turn it over by hand, not with the starter, because If you got a problem, it's going to break the starter or damage the piston rods if there's any problems with pistons sticking in the bore. So there's a lot of reason why you hire the professional shops. And the work is very difficult if you've ever done any of this stuff. And do-it-yourself work can result in death or injury. So do it at your own risk, or take it to a professional. And make sure they follow the service bulletins, and make sure they know what the hell they're doing, because a lot of them don't know the inside baseball, I'd like to call it, on how to maintain this engine. But I'm going to go outside and we'll talk a little more. We'll show you how to burp the air out of here. But I wanted to talk about all these things that can cause overheating, like super advanced timing. Unfortunately, if the clamp holding the distributor comes loose or isn't tightened, not too tight but enough to hold it, it will go full advance and you'll overheat from advanced timing, and that's kind of hard to find unless you got a timing light and know how to use it. And if you look on my YouTube channel under the Fiberglass Boat Restoration playlist, you will find all my videos where I get into each one of these operations one at a time. But the focus of this one is burping the air out of the closed cooling system, and I'm throwing in all these other things for free. Let's go outside and turn on the water and then run the engine, and I'll show you. First step, you have to turn on the water to the water ears or water muffs or whatever you want to call them. What's the proper name, people? Tell me. Post a comment. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Okay, make sure the water ears are covering the right place on the drive. Make sure the propeller has room to turn, because when I do this, and I try to do this as often as I can, and change your oil and filter as often as you can, because any coolant or water that ends up in the crankcase will sit on the bottom and rust out your pan. Okay, I got the battery on because I was in here earlier, and I have the coolant topped off, and I've checked the oil level, it's good. I've checked the power steering pump, it's good. I made sure I had no gases. You know, I ran the blower for 5 minutes, like so, and I have to warn you, this engine's not been run in about a month, and this boat's not been in the water, I think, in several years, because I'm waiting for somebody to come down and pay for my gas and ice, and we'll go out for a sea trial and have a little fun, maybe. But so far no takers. And oh, you need a pickup truck too, or something to pull the boat to the water and back, and so far nobody's offered to do that yet. I have high hopes some will one day, and one of my members says he's moving to St. Pete, so it might happen. Alright, and next thing, I have the choke adjusted wide open because it's too hard to adjust. This electric choke is fiddly, and I'll push the center button here and I'll give it some throttle, but first I'll just try to start it the way it is and we'll see what happens. And I got new batteries. You only do this with fully charged batteries because you can smoke an electrical system, especially if you have a water-cooled rectifier regulator or air-cooled, if you don't have the alternator kit. Even if you have the alternator kit, it's not good for it. It could cause damage to the alternator if your battery's weak or discharged. Make sure your batteries are fully topped off before you try this, okay? And on my boat, I've got battery 1 and battery 2, and a switch for both 1 or 2 are off, and I leave it off because this isn't going to sink. It's not on the water. And I have two big bilge pumps, 2000 GPM and 1500, and they're wired separately and fused separately. This is pretty good for no throttle, no nothing. I haven't touched it, but it's going to need a little more juice and persuasion. But while we're waiting for it to start, I need to talk a little bit more about my YouTube channel. No, I'm just kidding. Subscribe, please. That was it. Commercial over. If I get this running, what we do is we let it idle until it comes up to temperature. And you should have an infrared or some way to measure the temperature. The thermostat should open at 160 degrees, and when it does, you see it go glug, 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 and then you top it off, and you'll see air coming out, bub, 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 and that's it, you're burped. But you have to warm it to the point with the cap off, because the air can't go anywhere if it's trapped, and that causes your overheating. And here with your distributor, if that's loose, it'll go full clockwise to full advance. And engine will run and start great, but it'll overheat, like almost immediately. Come on, baby. Come on. Pretty good for an engine that hasn't actually run in a month. I rebuilt the carburetor myself with help from my friends at Mike's Carburetor Online. Good people. Excellent online help, interactive help. And I did the brass float like they recommended. My friend Kevin at Breezework in St. Pete, he does the single wire alternator kit. And now he's got a new kit, both high and low, to accommodate the power steering. But Kevin can tell you that that's his baby. He's worked hard to have a baby. But while it's running, you want to make sure the steering isn't frozen. And you want to make sure that everything's working the way you want it to. So I'm going to pause the camera for just a minute. Okay, I bumped up the throttle a little bit while it's in neutral. And PSI, we got about 35 PSI. This could go as low as 15 PSI. As it warms up, it'll run better. And we're holding oil pressure. Everything's good with the gauges. I want it to run a little bit faster so it warms the engine faster, but while we're waiting, you're going to want to take some ACF 50, corrosion preventative, ACF, Alpha Charlie Foxtrot -50. They sell it at Walmart, online. It's an aviation product, but it's great for corrosion preventative. Spray your power steering pump, especially the bottom of it, because it rusts out, and then you got to replace the case or the whole pump. And those are hard to find these days. This engine hasn't been produced since 1989. You see how the coolant is starting to bubble up. And when the thermostat opens, you'll see it go glug, 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 and it'll, whatever air that's trapped in there will come out with the cap off. This doesn't work with the cap on, people, okay? And if you think you got a leak, you can rent from most auto supply stores a coolant pressurization kit. Pressurize it, see if it holds pressure. And when you return it, they'll give you a full refund. So it's basically a free loan from places like AutoZone. And I think O'Reilly, and I don't think Napa does it right now. Napa has a big sign saying they have an auto loan program, but when I asked, they said no. Anyway, I'm waiting for the thermostat to open. And once the air escapes and you top it off, you can put the cap back on and you're done. And like I said earlier, this is the coolant information is on the service manual page 6A-9, 6A-9 from the 1989 manual that I have posted. The whole manual's posted in the media section for free. The same thing goes for service bulletin 83-11. I have given you all of these as free to review, but yet people keep posting. Well, you know, people, if you won't take the time to check out what I posted online in these groups and on YouTube, then I don't know how to help you. I can't teach people who refuse to learn. I was talking to a young man the other day, and he said, I'm going to subscribe to your channel, Mr. Seatsma, right away. Anyway, I'm in the Redland Farm section of Homestead, Florida, And we have a lot of problems out here in the farm area. People want to have party houses, and they want to race their cars like there's no law, and they want to blow stop signs like, you know, and people die. So when you're out in the country, be very careful. A lot of yay-hoos. Yay-hoo, yay-hoo. And when you talk to them, you say, well, this is how we do it in our country. You know, Central, South America, Canada, Europe, Australia, you know, you name it, wherever you're talking to them from there. They always have a reason why what they're doing is cool. People, take it to the racetrack, okay? Wherever the racetrack is. And if there isn't one, buy one. Start one. And that's a big problem for drag racers these days. One is, you know, and it's like drive-in theaters. Try to find some of those these days. But it's getting warmer. Now, while it's doing that, we could look at what side the water's coming out in the back. But I know it's only one side, because if this was a V8 or a V6 engine, the water would be coming out on both sides. But since this is an I4 engine, a 4-cylinder, you know, like straight 6 or straight 4, it only comes out on the side that you have the exhaust manifold on, which, you know, on this engine is the port side. Port is left, right is starboard. And had to learn all this stuff in school. I don't remember when or where, but these days I guess they don't cover physics and geometry and trigonometry. Now, of course, I studied electrical engineering, and I never thought I'd be smart enough to be an electrical engineer, but a lot of people in electrical engineering weren't as sharp as I thought they were, I guess. A lot of them were just, they were smart, they were just lazy. They didn't want to work. I always loved inventing new things and repairing things to make them work as the engineers intended. And of course, shooting holes in bad engineering, which on this engine you want to change that seawater elbow every 5 years, and you want to change the gasket because it fails between the aluminum exhaust manifold, which is this thing here, and the seawater elbow, because one's steel and the other's aluminum. And corrosion builds up on the aluminum side, and it's very expensive if you have that. So I say change the gasket once a year, whether it needs it or not. Keep the torque spec on those 4 bolts. There's another service bulletin that talks about that, and it's all posted to the media and file section. People say the file sections are confusing, they can't find what they want, so go to the media section. But I had this engine rebuilt locally by Herco, Hialeah Engine Rebuilders, back in, I think it was 2005. I had years and years of good service on it, but I messed up. Oh wow, what's happening now? Oh. Alright, getting ready to open the, there we go, it's open, yay! Anyway, what can happen is, you could have your water shutter fail, and if you stop suddenly, it comes up the tailpipe and gets into the cylinders and destroys your engine. So, anytime you have the seawater elbow off, double check the flapper. And I may have a fuel delivery problem. I try to change that filter as often as I can, and I'll get into a volume test on fuel delivery another day. Right now I got 2 other projects I'm working on. I'm working on my lawnmower, which you see behind me. It caught fire back in March, and I'm trying to repair it. And I got a van that I'm working on. If I could get the van to work, then I could pull the boat. Then I could go out myself. Or I can rent a truck. I just don't like to go out alone and break down. Anytime you have a boat, it can break down. Especially this engine can lose spark. It does all the time. But that's because they had a resistance wire, a purple wire, that went from the electric choke. Okay, now it's starting to glug, glug, glug. You can see see the bubbles coming out. Yeah. Anyway, a very simple procedure, but you have to know why you're doing it and what it does in physics. And this is true on your automobile closed cooling system or other marine engines. I just happen to own this engine as first owner since 1989 and rebuilt in 2005. Now in that case, I didn't change the seawater elbow, it rusted out. I had hydrostatic lock and I bent the rod on number 1. So I didn't know it. Took years, but eventually I got rod knock. And I also had water leaking internal, I didn't know, and it rusted out my pan at the same time. So I had like three bad things happen at once. So, okay. But anyway, this is the procedure, people. I'm sure it's up to temperature now. See what the oil pressure is. The oil pressure can be very low on this engine at idle, and that's fine. We don't care. It can be as low as 15 psi according to a service bulletin from, I think it was Jasper Rebuilders, back years ago, like 2001. And that also was on the media. I do it as photographs because people are crazy about opening files. They don't want to do it. Word, doesn't matter if it's a good file or a bad file. Now, if I don't fall and hurt myself, I'm going to show you the water coming out. Now, I burn more damn impellers by forgetting to turn on the water, but a normal, healthy engine, this engine, an I-4, will only put out water on the starboard side, which is the right-hand side, the captain's side, okay? Now, I had, years ago, I had the bilge on the port side. Bad idea. It needs to be where the captain can see the bilge. So I made 2 new holes and put in bilge pump on this side. And I like to test the bilge pump all the time. And I like to test the up and down, the hydraulic trim pump often. Put it back to idle, see if it keeps running. Now, a couple of years ago, I had bad controls. The controls were wore out from 1989. So I took it to a shop and I had them professionally install this Quicksilver Commander MPC 4000 Generation 2 controls and all new cables. And of course, while they were in there, they picked on my, I'd done a bellows job, and they said I did a lousy job. So I said, okay, fix it, I'll pay you. Because the boat was in their shop anyway. Oh boy, was that expensive. Anyway, they pulled the drive, and they did a lower control cable, and made all the adjustments, but I had to make the final adjustment, because the final adjustment is with the boat on the water. Hush up, songbird. I put stuff in the feeders. Yeah. Hey, birdie, birdie, birdie in the sky. Well, you do that in my eye. Yeah, kindergarten stuff. But anyway, make sure your steering is not frozen when it's running. Go back and forth. Keep it lubricated. But she shifts really nice now. People who doubt the easy shift when properly it doesn't work, it has to work. On a busy day at the marina, you got to be able to go back, forward, back. Everything's got to work, or you're going to bump into other people, and that could lead to litigation. Now I put it in gear to stir the lubricant in the drive. Okay? It's good to do that because you don't want it freezing up. Because if you just run it in neutral, you're not going to get that stirring. And once a year, pull a drive. Once a year, pull it and take it to your marine professional shop and have the annual service done, because they do pressure testing and they replace whatever seals are leaking, and you don't want milkshake in the drive. If you have it serviced once a year, you'll probably never have a problem. But people leave boats in the water till the drive's covered with barnacles. And hello, mockingbird. Mockingbird. It's really a happy bird. I put a lot of feed in the feeders today. Like, I didn't put any in that one. I ran out of feed. I put like 20 pounds out yesterday. And then do reverse. Make sure everything's cool with forward and reverse and neutral. And people that doubt me on how good this engine can be, nanny nanny boo boo. But after it's burped, you just keep adding coolant, keep it topped off. Now you notice the level is coming up and down as the thermostat opens and closes, so that tells you the thermostat's working. The recommended thermostat for this one is 160 degrees. And the noise you heard earlier, I have an extra sensors alarm. If the oil pressure is too low or the coolant temperature is too high, an alarm will sound. And that the high temperature, I'd add an extra sensor, and I've got mine marked here. This is the coolant sender unit, is the one in the front, and then the alarm sender is the one behind it. The alarm sender is normally open circuit when things are normal, and it goes short to ground when there's an alarm. Same thing on the oil pressure. Now, on the trim pump, the hydraulic trim pump, I like to keep mine out of the water. I like to have it on a pedestal, a stainless steel pedestal, an aftermarket. If I can get this strap loose, I can show you. Maybe. But anyway, I made the pedestal myself, and there it is. It's on a pedestal. Make sure you keep it topped off. I use power steering fluid, but Mercurser says you can use motor oil too. But I like power steering fluid. Seems to work better than motor oil. And if it gets contaminated, take the whole thing out of the boat to the bench and clean it, put it back on. And if you got contaminated oil, you probably need to service the rams. Now, as far as the electrics for that motor, the solenoids go bad fairly often, the up and down solenoids. But most often what happens is there are bullet connectors on the ram limit sensor. A bullet connector, electrical cotton picking airplane. You're noisy. Anyway, I'm near an airport. Those come loose and it stops working. So I recommend, this is Dennis speaking, you don't have to. Captain's boat, captain's rules. Dennis recommends cut the damn bullet connectors and use a Western Union splice. Look it up. It goes back to telegraphy days, Morse code. And make a Western Union splice and solder it. And with 3 coats of paintable vinyl tape. I like Starbright brand. It seems to be the best for marine. Starbright online. Starbright paintable PVT, paintable vinyl tape, PVT. And 2 coats of that, and then 2 coats of insulation tape over all the butt splices. And do the same thing for your trim level sensor. Okay. Well, now that you're done all this stuff, you've got the air burp, so you can put the cap back on. Now, where'd my cap go? Hello, cap. If I don't put it on, and water's gonna go everywhere. Coolant, I mean. Coolant. Yeah, let's see if it goes in reverse while I'm looking for the coolant cap. What the hell did I do with, oh, there it is. Okay. And I keep my batteries marked by date, who I bought it from and what day. And I load test these all the time using what they call a toaster. I like one from OTC Tools, the heavy duty model, 130 amp tester. Not as good as testing it by starting it, but okay, so now ooh, that's hot. burn my fingers. Okay, so that's that. Let's see what happens when I put it in reverse. That's neutral. Let's see, we'll put it in reverse. Nice! Nice, nice, nice. Smooth as a baby's butt. I heard a funny noise though. Might be a gimbal bearing going out. I heard a screech. Because the gimbal bearing's used to going forward. When those gimbal bearings blow, they make noise. So probably need a gimbal bearing. When I pull the drive for the next service, I'll pop out that bearing and replace it. Pretty easy to do if you have a puller. Pop it out and put another one in, no big deal. Just the cost of the bearing is like 50 bucks or something like that. Online it might be cheaper. But the gimbal bearings need to be changed all the time. But let's stop it and see how it starts. Whew, nice and quiet all of a sudden. Now, with the boat in the water, you're going to have a little more back pressure, so you'll set up the idle. You'll adjust the idle screw. This is a 2-barrel here. And I got to take some photographs to get these numbers. I keep forgetting to do that. So, questions, comments, recommendations, and of course, do your up-down. Now I have the original hydraulic pump, and it went bad on the up, so I switched up with down. I switched the wiring too, and it'll probably die one day, but it's okay for now. It'll probably die when I have friends and family here and want to show them Papa's boat, Papa's boat. Anyway, I had the vinyl redone by Homestead Upholstery, and that was done like 2017. But now they have new vinyl that came out from my friends at Glen Raven Industries. Glen Raven is the maker of Sunbrella, and this is the Sunbrella from 2017. And normally Sunbrella doesn't ever fade or rip or tear. It's the zippers that can't handle the UV. And we'll turn all the power off, like I did there. And I hope you enjoy my video, audience. Dennis Sietsma, Dennis John Sietsma Productions, Homestead, Florida. Do-it-yourself can cause death or injury, so do-it-yourself work is done at your own risk. And if you have any doubt of your abilities to do work safely, hire a professional, get an estimate from a shop. Don't put yourself in danger to save a few bucks. It ain't worth it. It is not worth it. But if you can master the do-it-yourself stuff, you get the satisfaction of knowing your craft and the condition of your craft at all times. And there's a good book on reconditioning fiberglass boats done by Captain Wayne Canning, and it's under $20 online. And Wayne is quite an expert. He's a marine surveyor, and I met him once at the Miami Boat Show. I wish he had been a little friendlier, but I guess he meets a lot of people who criticize his work, and I wasn't one of them. But I admire what's in his book, because if I was going to write a book, I would do that. Now the muffs fell off when I raised the drive. The muffs were on the whole time we were running, but I burnt so many impellers, and I smoked this one too. It's still working, but the impellers are pretty durable, but when you change them, you should change the impeller and the housing at the same time. And like I say, this is a bread and butter deal for marine shops, so pull the drive. Don't bring the boat in. Pull the drive. It'll be a lot cheaper and faster. Give them your drive, but get the serial numbers off it, so make sure they don't swap it on you with another drive. I may have fallen victim to that myself. But thank you for watching. This is Dennis Sietsma, Homestead, Florida, USA. Dennis John Sietsma Productions.